Betrayal, lies, and manipulation almost took me down, but I turned my pain into victory. Life had always seemed relatively peaceful to me. I had a routine I considered balanced: work, family, small but solid dreams. I thought love was simple, marriage was a partnership, and being with someone meant sharing achievements and challenges fairly. But, as I later discovered, life has a cruel way of showing that nothing is as we imagine. Every gesture, every word, even silences, can hide intentions we never imagined. In my case, the first feeling that something wasn't right emerged as a diffuse uneasiness. Small, subtle things that I initially considered insignificant. An out-of-place comment, an unwarranted doubt, a look that concealed something. That's how the cracks in what I thought was solid and unshakable began. It was like realizing the ground supporting my feet had tiny cracks, invisible until they became large enough to threaten to collapse. At first, I tried to rationalize, mentally, explaining away every flaw or strange behavior, believing it was my own paranoia. However, the feeling that something was wrong grew silently, like a constant pressure. I felt a discomfort I couldn't name, a tension that transformed days that were previously predictable and calm into moments of constant alert. I began to realize that my life, as I knew it, was about to change profoundly and unexpectedly, and that I would have to face it alone, with no one to guide me clearly. During that period, I was immersed in my work, trying to maintain financial and emotional stability. I managed my life in an organized, almost meticulous way. Spreadsheets, appointments, responsibilities. Everything needed to be under control, because I believed that security was the foundation of any relationship or personal project. However, even with all the organization and attention, some things slipped through the cracks, especially when they involved human feelings and hidden intentions. I began to realize that despite my dedication and care, there was something stirring in the shadows of my own home, something that threatened to undermine years of trust and patience. My marriage, which I had believed to be a balanced partnership, began to feel like a minefield where every gesture and every word needed to be watched with double attention. It was distressing to realize that I could be surrounded by manipulation and hidden agendas without even imagining the magnitude of the threat. This feeling of vulnerability, of not being able to trust what I saw or heard, began to erode my emotional stability. Every phone call, every meeting, every domestic interaction became a test, and I found myself constantly questioning my perception of reality. Deep down, I knew something bigger was happening, but I didn't yet fully grasp the magnitude of what I was about to face. Little by little, things began to intensify. Small signs that previously seemed random began to form a pattern. I discovered, through indirect conversations and situations, that the person I trusted most, my own wife, had intentions that went far beyond anything I could have imagined. It was as if my entire past, all the years of marriage, were being used to build a meticulous plan against me. I felt frustration growing, but also a silent anger, an indignation that needed to be contained, lest it become self-destructive. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming, and I had to learn to separate my emotions from my reasoning, because every misstep could strengthen the power of those who wanted to manipulate me. My mind began to work incessantly, strategizing, analyzing possibilities, trying to anticipate moves and intentions that had not yet fully revealed themselves. In this process, self-confidence became fundamental. I needed to believe I could handle it, even when it seemed the world was silently crumbling around me. Each night became long, filled with thoughts and hypotheses, and my once predictable routine turned into an emotional minefield, where every decision carried critical weight for what would come next. It was in this context that I realized the true scale of the challenge before me. The situation wasn't just about money or material possessions. It was about dignity, control, and the ability to maintain my integrity in the face of coldly planned manipulation. Understanding this was the first step in changing how I would face the crisis. If I continued to react emotionally without a strategy, I would be lost. It was necessary to think clearly, analyze every move, and protect not only my assets but also my emotional health. I began to study legal and secure ways to shield my assets, document every piece of evidence, and anticipate possible attempts at psychological attack. It was a complex game, where patience and intelligence became weapons as sharp as any direct action. The tension was constant, and with each discovery, I felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief at identifying more pieces of the puzzle, fear at realizing the extent of the plan being hatched against me. This realization reinforced my need to remain firm, disciplined, and above all, ethical in every action I took, even when instinct told me to retaliate immediately. It was during this period of discovery and growing tension that I began to realize the value of having someone truly by my side, someone who wasn't manipulated by circumstances. My mother, Gloria, became my rock. Every conversation with her brought clarity, security, and above all, emotional strength to move forward. She not only offered support, but also helped me organize my thoughts, see strategies in a practical way, and remain calm when everything around me seemed to conspire to destabilize me. Feeling this support was decisive. It reminded me that even alone at many moments, I wasn't without emotional support. It gave me the courage to plan my response in a structured and patient way, rather than reactively. I learned during this period that true strength lies not in reacting immediately, but in understanding, analyzing, and acting at the right moment with intelligence and ethics. Every conversation with my mother was like a beacon, illuminating paths I couldn't see alone and allowing me to maintain balance amidst the storm that was silently gathering in my life. As the days passed, the tension became almost physical. Every call from Vanessa, every ambiguous message put me on high alert. I knew she was planning something big, something that could destroy years of work and dedication. A feeling of helplessness haunted me, but I refused to give in to anxiety. I needed patience. I needed strategy. I began analyzing every detail, from small conversations to seemingly innocent actions, searching for patterns and hidden intentions. It wasn't just a financial battle. It was a psychological war, silent and invisible, where every gesture, every silence could be a weapon. I felt isolated, even surrounded by people. Distrust corroded my mind, but it also awakened a rare clarity. Understanding the enemy was the first step to victory. I discovered that Vanessa had accomplices, people willing to support her plans without question, and this made everything even more dangerous. The feeling of betrayal was profound, not only because of the impending coup, but also because of the realization that someone so close could manipulate and deceive so easily. Each night, I reviewed strategies, planning steps to ensure legal and emotional safety, studying every possible action and reaction. The feeling that I was entering a minefield without a map was intense, but I learned to transform fear into fuel, converting nervousness and anger into focus and practical intelligence. It was during this period that Mateus entered the story decisively. He wasn't just an acquaintance. He became a catalyst for truths I wasn't yet ready to face. Conversations with him revealed details about Vanessa's relationship with Igor, about intentions that went far beyond what I could have imagined. Discovering that my wife was using a lover as a tool of manipulation left me in shock. The feelings of indignation and pain mixed with an urgent need for action. I needed to react, but react intelligently, not impulsively. Every decision needed to be measured, planned, legal, and strategic. The knowledge Mateus brought was a kind of wake-up call. It showed me the true scale of the threat, and paradoxically gave me an opportunity to anticipate it. It was at that moment that I realized that despite the pain and the sense of betrayal, I had the resources and skills to protect myself. Clarity began to emerge, and with it, the confidence that it was possible not only to survive this crisis, but to emerge from it stronger and more whole than before. The next phase was an intense test of my patience and self-control. Legally transferring my assets to a trust seemed simple, but it required precision and strategy. Every signature, every document, every step had to be impeccable because any mistake could be fatal. For weeks, my routine became a sequence of silent planning, discreet meetings, legal consultations, and meticulous decisions. There was no room for emotional or impulsive mistakes. Any loss of control could expose my intentions and give Vanessa the upper hand. At the same time, Vanessa and Igor's every gesture became more obvious, more aggressive, as if they sensed something was slipping out of their control. The psychological tension was exhausting. I had to balance intelligence, ethics, and patience while they tested limits, provoked, and looked for flaws. I learned the importance of remaining calm, of taking a deep breath before reacting, of silently observing the situation as it unfolded. Every small detail became crucial, and the feeling of being in a chess game where every move could determine victory or defeat became the reality of my daily life. The height of this tension came when Vanessa finally realized the transfer of assets to the trust. Her shock was not only a personal victory, but an emotional turning point for me. Seeing the farce crumble before my eyes brought a sense of justice, but also a complex mix of emotions, relief, residual fear, and an intense awareness that the war was not yet over. She didn't back down. On the contrary, she intensified her attempts at manipulation, testing my limits of patience and self-control. The psychological warfare intensified, and every word, every gesture, and even every silence became weapons in this silent struggle. I had to learn to ignore provocations, to stick to my strategy and not allow anger or fear to guide my actions. This period was an intense training in resilience, self-control, and emotional intelligence, where victory was not only legal or financial, but also internal. Maintaining my integrity, my clarity, and my balance in the face of cruel manipulation. During these moments, I realized that my greatest strength lay not just in the documents or strategies, but in my ability to remain ethical, calm, and centered. The emotional tension was overwhelming. Feeling betrayed, manipulated, and threatened creates a whirlwind of thoughts and feelings that can easily paralyze anyone. I needed to learn to separate emotions from actions, to transform pain and anger into focus and determination, and to trust in my own ability to deal with the unpredictable. Every step I took was carefully measured, every word spoken was analyzed before being uttered. Every silence became a strategic defense. It was a painful, lonely, and demanding process, but extremely revealing. I learned that true strength in extreme situations is not just physical or emotional, but strategic and ethical. Acting correctly even when everything around me tries to induce error or impulsive reaction. This realization became the foundation on which I would build my recovery and overcoming, paving the way for the transformation that was to come. From the moment Vanessa discovered that all my assets were protected by the trust, the psychological warfare reached its peak. It was no longer just a financial dispute. It became a battle of control, pride, and power. Her every look carried a challenge. Every gesture seemed designed to destabilize me emotionally. I felt the pressure mounting daily, and at times I thought I wouldn't be able to remain calm. Anger boiled, mixed with the pain of betrayal and the feeling of injustice. However, an inner voice reminded me, you need to be patient, act strategically, and not let yourself be carried away by emotions. It was a period of intense exhaustion. I would wake up in the morning with my mind already thinking about the next steps, anticipating moves, calculating risks. Any oversight could cost me dearly, not only financially but emotionally. Vanessa tried to provoke me, using Igor as a tool of manipulation, creating situations that tested my limits. It was a game of patience and observation, where victory depended on my ability to remain upright, calm, and centered, even when everything seemed to be conspiring against me. There were times when I almost gave up, I admit. The weight of carrying this battle alone was overwhelming. Some nights, despair knocked on my door, and thoughts of inadequacy arose forcefully. I questioned my own perception, my ability to cope with what was happening, and even my worth in the face of such manipulation. But it was precisely in those moments that I found the inner strength I didn't know I possessed. The memory of my mother's support, the understanding that I needed to protect not only my possessions, but also my dignity and emotional peace, gave me courage. I learned to breathe deeply, to slow down my thinking, and to focus my energies on what I could control: my actions, my decisions, and my integrity. With each obstacle, I internalized the lesson that, to win, it wasn't enough to act quickly. I needed to act correctly with strategy, patience, and ethics. This learning became the pillar of my resilience. As the tension grew, I began to notice nuances in the way Vanessa and Igor operated. Each attempt at manipulation had patterns, weaknesses that could be exploited ethically and silently. I began studying not only legal documents, but also human behavior, communication strategies, and ways to maintain emotional control. What seemed like an untenable situation became an intense learning ground. I developed a rigorous mental discipline where every reaction was considered, every word carefully chosen, and every silent gesture had a strategic purpose. The battle was no longer just about protecting assets. It became a form of personal growth, a test of resilience, emotional intelligence, and the ability to maintain ethics amid manipulation. The tension, which had previously paralyzed me, began to be channeled as strength, transforming fear and pain into focus and determination. The turning point came when I realized that true power lay in not reacting to emotional attacks. Vanessa tried to provoke, intimidate, and manipulate me, but my every reaction was measured, silent, almost invisible. This frustrated her and revealed vulnerabilities that had previously been hidden. I felt a mixture of satisfaction and lightness when I realized that, even surrounded by betrayal and manipulation, I could maintain my dignity intact. I was transforming from victim to protagonist of my own story. Every gesture, every silence, every strategically signed legal document became a weapon of protection, but also a tool of empowerment. The feeling of control over my life, despite the emotional chaos around me, gave me unprecedented confidence. I learned that often true victory is not evident to others, but deeply felt by those who face and overcome it. During this period, I also discovered the importance of recording everything, of documenting every step, every communication, every piece of evidence that might be relevant. Organization became an emotional and strategic survival mechanism. The feeling of having control over my actions and evidence gave me the confidence to face Vanessa and Igor's daily provocations. At the same time, I realized that I didn't just need to win legally. Overcoming emotional problems was even more important. I learned to separate the pain of manipulation from what was truly mine, to focus on solutions and strategies, and not to let pride or anger dictate my actions. With each passing day, I felt myself becoming stronger, more aware, and better prepared to deal with any adversity. The battle that seemed inhumane transformed into a process of self-discovery and internal strengthening, and the feeling of progress, even slow, was liberating. As the silent war continued, I began to notice changes within myself that I never imagined possible. But these Tension that had previously paralyzed me began to be channeled strategically, as if each challenge became a lesson in self-knowledge. Vanessa continued to try to manipulate me, using words, gestures, and silence as weapons. But I was different. Each provocation was absorbed, analyzed, and transformed into focus, planning, and emotional intelligence. I discovered that patience was not just a virtue, but a survival tool. My sense of control over my own life grew with each passing day, even as I realized she was trying to test the limits of my resilience. I learned not to let anger or fear get the better of me, and this silent stance began to generate a silent, almost invisible advantage that strengthened me and weakened the other side's strategy. Over time, I realized that the real battle wasn't outside of me, but within. The pain of betrayal, the feeling of injustice, and the constant tension were an opportunity to test my emotional limits. Every moment I considered giving up, giving into anger or frustration, reminded me of the importance of acting consciously, balanced, and ethically. It was in this process that I began to experience a significant transformation. It wasn't just a matter of protecting assets or winning legally, but of strengthening my self-esteem, self-confidence, and integrity. Each silent victory, each wise decision, each thoughtful reaction became proof that I could overcome any adversity without losing who I truly was. This realization began to reduce anxiety and fear, replacing them with a sense of empowerment and mental clarity. The emotional turning point came when I realized that Vanessa, despite all her manipulation, no longer had control over me. Her charade was crumbling, not just because of my legal actions, but because of my emotional posture. I learned that when we maintain integrity and emotional intelligence, it's not necessary to directly confront every attack. Often, the truth itself reveals itself and becomes enough to free us. This realization brought profound relief, a sense of quiet victory that didn't need to be visible to others. I felt I had regained my autonomy, my dignity, and my balance, and that every effort had been worth it. The tension that had previously crushed me transformed into quiet strength, and a sense of inner peace began to consolidate. Throughout this period, my relationship with my mother also took on new forms. Gloria remained my foundation, but now I realized that I had also learned from her the importance of patience, strategy, and resilience. Her words, support, and presence helped me understand that I didn't have to carry the blame or responsibility alone. She taught me that true strength isn't just shown in visible actions, but in the ability to maintain ethics, patience, and balance in the face of any crisis. Each conversation with her strengthened my confidence, and I began to realize that the path to overcoming obstacles was not just facing obstacles, but learning from them, growing and emerging stronger than before. Finally, I began to experience a sense of freedom that came not from legal victory, but from emotional conquest. I knew there were still residual challenges which Vanessa and Igor might try to manipulate or provoke, but now I had the internal tools to deal with them. My confidence, my patience, my mental clarity, and my integrity became powerful shields. I learned that true overcoming doesn't require eliminating the problem entirely, but transforming the way we face it, maintaining dignity and self-control. This silent yet intense learning allowed me to feel that I had not only survived the storm, but was ready to live more consciously, strategically, and emotionally balanced, ready to build a life without relying on the approval or manipulation of others. In the days following the consolidation of the trust and the realization that my emotional posture was firm, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: freedom. It wasn't a grand or spectacular freedom, but a quiet, concrete, and deeply personal one. Every step I had taken, legal, strategic, and emotional, now showed me that I could trust myself, that my integrity and patience were stronger than any external manipulation. Vanessa and Igor, despite their efforts, no longer had any influence over my life, and what had once seemed like a constant threat became a lesson in self-confidence and resilience. I realized that true victory lay not only in protecting my assets, but in regaining my inner peace, in the ability to maintain integrity in the face of adversity, and in the clarity that I was capable of handling any challenge without losing my balance. Reflecting on the entire process, I understood that my transformation didn't happen overnight. Every tense moment, every near give-up, every silent plan was crucial to shaping the person I've become. I learned that true overcoming requires patience, emotional intelligence, and ethics. Even when everything around us tries to mislead us, I discovered that our greatest strengths often emerge amid pain, injustice, and feelings of powerlessness, and that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. This understanding gave me not only the strength to face challenges, but also the serenity to deal with what was still unresolved. Today, when I look back, I realize that the greatest lesson I learned wasn't just about dealing with manipulation or protecting assets, but about self-knowledge and inner growth. I discovered that I can maintain my dignity even in the face of direct attacks, that I can transform pain into strategy, and that patience, combined with emotional intelligence, is more powerful than any impulsive reaction. The experience taught me to trust myself more, to value my perception, to set clear boundaries, and to recognize that personal integrity is a gift that no circumstance can take away. Every obstacle I faced ultimately became a stepping stone towards my own evolution. Today, I introduce myself. My name is Leandro, and the story I'm sharing happened a few years ago, during a time in my life when I was in a marriage I thought was balanced, while working to build a stable and secure life. I was a reserved, intelligent, and dedicated man, but I never imagined how vulnerable I could be to the emotional manipulation of those who claimed to love me. By sharing this with you, I'm not seeking to demonstrate strength or perfection, but rather humanity, resilience, and the possibility of overcoming even when all seems lost. I want you to know that it's possible to rise again, even when the ground seems to have disappeared from under you. Today, I live differently, more conscious, strategic, emotionally balanced, and empowered. I learned to recognize the signs, to act ethically and patiently, to value my own worth, and to protect my dignity above all else. The psychological warfare I faced not only taught me to protect myself, but also allowed me to discover an inner strength I hadn't known, and this discovery became my greatest treasure. Despite the scars, the pain, and the sleepless nights, I managed to get back on my feet, rebuild my life, and prove to myself that overcoming obstacles is possible, even in the face of manipulation, betrayal, and seemingly insurmountable challenges. Today, every choice I make is based on clarity, intelligence, and self-respect, and the sense of control over my own life is undoubtedly the most significant victory I have achieved.